Okay, Reddit, what are your true stories that nobody will ever believe? I was riding my bike, hit a curb, flipped over my handlebars, and landed on my feet. It was early in the morning, so no one was around to see it. About 2 months ago, I was riding my bike downhill and misjudged my speed for a turn. My bike hit the corner of the curb and I went flying off, 18-20 mph, landed on my feet, and took 3 or 4 huge lunges forward with arms flailing to kill my momentum and somehow managed not to fall. I ended up fracturing my left foot, the one I landed on first, from the impact, and didn't have a scratch on me. The bike tire also exploded on impact and the wheel was a bit dented. As I come to a stop, I look around in disbelief at my lack of injury, not having realized my foot was fractured yet, and see a little old lady on the sidewalk staring at me with an open mouth. I'm sure nobody but her, and I really know how amazing the crash was. I did something just like this, except I didn't land on my feet. I landed on my stomach and slid 40 feet headfirst into a bridge abutment, to let my skull breathe. My dad worked at Area 51 for almost 10 years. I was born with spina bifida and my case has been widely studied. I appear in a lot of medical journals of the time. I am the highest functioning person with the class of spina bifida I have on record. When I was born, the Pope held a moment of silent prayer for me on behalf of my great-uncles. There is more. Edit some explanation. Spina bifida. When I was born, spina bifida treatment had recently had some major breakthroughs. Most of these breakthrough surgeries were the product of 2 surgeons in Las Vegas. The surgeons are Dr. Gott and Dr. Hammergren. I was one of the first people to receive these surgeries and treatments. So by circumstance of time of birth and location, I became a very lucky medical subject who had many very serious problems thwarted by some very good surgeons. These 2 guys are basically considered some of the rock stars of neurosurgery. Neurosurgeons who specialized in spina bifida are very few and far between. So every time I went to see a new one, they would grate me with stuff like, Yes, I have read your case and I am pretty excited to get to work on it. They are the ones who said that with the degree of spina bifida I had at birth, I am far and away the most functional case on the records, and none, so far, have known any better. Blessed by the Pope, my great-uncle was a very respected priest in the Catholic Church. He spent most of his life in the Horn of Africa. He turned down many offers to become much higher in position with the Church and offers to work with the Vatican directly. He loved his work in Africa. When I was born, my family was aware that there was a narrow chance for survival, let alone for me to be a functional human. So he requested a prayer in my name, and it was granted. Area 51. When I was born in Las Vegas, we were officially stationed at Nellis AFB. Since he left Nam in the mid-70s, my dad was recruited to work for the engine shop at the Groom Lake compound, Area 51. He tells very little about it. If you ask what he did, he will say he worked on planes. If you ask what kind, he will say the kind that fly. Me and my dad drove our rental car in neutral with no gas from the top of the volcano in Maui into a gas station in Kahului, hitting every single green light there was and never having to stop once. I had a race near identical to ending of Ferris Bueller with my mom when one of our neighbors tipped her off that she saw me at the mall, playing the Simpsons arcade game. Mind you, instead of being sick at home in bed, it included me running through yards, running across the avenue as her car crossed perpendicular to me, and jumping over somebody on the lawn. I lost the race because I actually ran out of breath from laughing at the similarity of the situation. Was told to go to my room, played my NES for the rest of the night. PSSHH, lost because you ran out of breath? Ferris stopped to chat up the cute girl. Yes, lol. Very few people believe my story about the drunk guy in a McDonald's parking lot, but I'll tell it anyways. My friends and I went to McDonald's around closing time to get some late-night food. The restaurant was already closed, but the drive-thru was still open. When we got there, there was a drunk, possibly mentally troubled, man pulling on the doors, trying to get in. We told him the restaurant part was closed, but that we could get him some food from the drive-thru if he gave us money. He gave us a few dollars and ordered a large fries. We returned with his food. After we gave it to him, he yelled that they were too salted, pulled out his dick, and began trying to bat fries at our car with it. He batted fries at our car with his fucking dick. We sped away into the night, forever changed by the incident. I believe you only because that story is hilarious. Sometime around 2002 or 2003, I went out camping with a dozen or so friends who were in the restaurant business. We went in the middle of the week as that's the only time they could get off, so the campground we were at in Manitoba was completely empty except for us. We were partying pretty hard, lots of booze and weed was consumed, and we decided to walk down to the beach as that's what one does in the middle of the night while camping. When we got to the lake, the sky above was absolutely lit up with the northern lights. If you've ever seen proper northern lights, you'll know how fast those tendrils of light can whip around the sky. This was an absolutely mind-blowing experience, so we all decided to lie down on the beach and stare up at the show. This went on for maybe 10 or 20 minutes, with much oohing and eyeing by everyone there. Suddenly, the northern lights stopped. And by stopped, I mean all the tendrils laced across the sky stopped moving, and more surprisingly, they all arced towards a ring in the middle, directly above us. This wasn't just something I witnessed. Everyone was asking, "Are you seeing this? Is this happening?" It was so unnatural, and so bizarre as all the waves were pointed at a spot directly above us, radiating out towards the edges of the sky. This lasted for a good 5 or 10 minutes, and then they faded away. Everyone there witnessed it, and it made everyone else super uncomfortable. To this day when I mention it, everyone else sorta laughs nervously, and says, "Yeah, we must have smoked too much weed that day," and move on from the subject. I don't know what caused the phenomenon, but it was the single strangest event I've witnessed in my life. Home alone completely. No pets. No one has a key to the house but me. I'd bake a pizza and walk away to let it cool. Come back. No fucking pizza. I'd show proof, but it would just be a picture of my empty countertop. True fish story. I was amateur fishing with my dad on Edgartown Dock on Martha's Vineyard. I noticed that I have a fish hooked, so I start to reel it in. Suddenly a fucking cormorant, swimming bird, swims up and snags that little bitch. So now I'm in a fucking tug of war over a fish's life with a goddamn bird. And I was like 11 at the time. I won the tug of war, then tossed the fish back into the gaping jaws of the bird. I am gracious in my victories. I once caught a small chipmunk while bass fishing. Went bass fishing with a surface lure that imitates a swimming frog, and the chipmunk swam right in front of the lure. I let him swim with it cause I didn't want to embed the hook any deeper, but of course he heads straight for land at the rate of one of those Jesus lizards. The little chippy starts doing this crazy fucking dance on the rocks, and I shit you not, he starts spinning his tail in circles like Tails from Sonic and Tails. My dad ended up just cutting the line, and my 8-year-old self cried at the loss of my favorite lure. Not the completely fucked over chipmunk. At school, years ago, I drop-kicked a thick-cut chip, French fry, into the air and thought nothing of it. Seconds later a scream and applause erupted from about 15 yards away as the chip had flew through the air and landed inside someone's Coke bottle whilst they were walking with it. I was standing at the bottom of a large flight of stairs at my school, and there was a guy with pretzels at the top. I asked for one and he threw it down hard, thinking it would land on the floor and I'd be sad. Instead, I caught it in my mouth. My girlfriend and I were exiting a movie one summer night, and I saw a black guy in some fantastic fucking attire with the little white girl who was dressed a little slutty. So, while we're walking by, this guy's hat blows off his head and he just turns around and ignores it. I chase after the hat for the hell of it, I guess. I bring the hat back to him and say, "Here you go, man." He takes the hat and thanks me, and going into a handshake he says, "Buy your girl something nice," and puts something in my hand. I walk away kind of freaked out and look at the paper in my hand. Fucking $100 bill. I know that dude was a total fucking pimp. Not me, but my dad says this happened to him just under a month ago. He was in a nature trail park walking my dog while visiting some friends. This is in the city, so there are houses surrounding the park, but inside of it it's just like being in a forest. Anyway, my dog is just playing in a nearby creek, when my dad hears some bizarre squawking like noise, followed by rustling, then silence, then more thrashing and squawking. This continues for a few minutes before he starts to hear a rhythmic thumping. The rusting continues. My dad, now frozen with curiosity, hears this thumping growing louder until an eagle swoops out of a nearby tree with a woodpecker latched onto its back, pecking the eagle's head. The pair flew past him and into some trees and out of sight. The best explanation he can think of is this woodpecker landed on the eagle's back thinking it was a tree, and freaked the fuck out when it realized it wasn't. I guess the fact that I believe him means I don't have any reason to be in this thread, but I know you're all just here to read crazy stories. I'm out on a date downtown, and was having dinner at a place that had little mini Grey Poupon bottles on the table. I couldn't tell you why, aside from a few beers, but for some reason, I decided to pocket the Grey Poupon bottle, and then promptly forgot about it. Until, we're walking down the city street, and there are cars parked at the curb, one of which has a guy hanging out the driver's side, hollering at passing girls. So my date and I walk by, and he regards us as we pass, thinking for a minute, and then blurts out, "Pardon me, do you have any Grey Poupon?" At which point I reached into my pocket, walked over to him, said, "But of course," and handed him the bottle of Grey Poupon. Only my date and that guy, and another friend of mine, can verify that it actually happened. It's honestly a bit too weak of an anecdote to just make up, in my opinion. Only a lucky coincidence. Somewhere else on the internet, that dude is telling this story from his perspective in a thread just like this one. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.